So let's start with some context. Why does Donald Trump want Greenland and the Panama Canal?
Well, we know that in 2019, when Trump was last in the White House, he mused about the United States seeking to acquire Greenland. And then over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's returned to this theme, but has also included the Panama Canal. With respect to Greenland, it's really a little bit imprecise as to why incoming President Trump would be seeking to acquire Greenland, but myself and other analysts would immediately point to the potential minerals value that could be found in an independent Greenland, and of course the strategic value of the United States being able to acquire Greenland, given it's a very large island in the Arctic, and it's positioned in a strategic and pivotal position between the United States and Russia and Europe. With respect to the Panama Canal, of course, the United States' long historical interest in the Panama Canal was involved in the building of the Panama Canal, and incoming President Trump's concerns about the American interest in the Panama Canal really relate to the cost associated with US flagged vessels being able to freely navigate between the canal on a regular basis.
I guess the strategic importance you're getting at with Greenland in particular is also about military assets being stationed there, and it's a convenient location to Europe and other powers. I'm guessing, Don, there's a sort of military reason that you would want you'd want some territory there.
So Greenland was used during World War II as a staging point for US military forces in terms of military operations into Europe. And then during the Cold War, the Americans also had an interest in Greenland. That has dissipated over time. But yes, any ability of the Americans to influence or acquire some territorial possession in Greenland would allow them to reassert that military interest, which, as I said, has waned in recent years. And as you've noted in your introduction, Greenland is a part of the kingdom, the realm of Denmark. It's a territory where the indigenous peoples in Greenland are slowly but surely moving towards self-determination, and I've certainly had an expectation that we can expect to see in due course an independent Greenland state, perhaps in the next 10 to 15 years. And those sort of basic points have been reasserted by the Danish Prime Minister in comments that she made overnight in response to incoming President Trump's comments.
Mr. Trump's comments came as part of a fairly rambling press conference. It can sometimes be tricky to sort out Donald Trump's rhetoric from the, let's call them core promises, sometimes in this sort of press conference format. But what do you make of this suggestion from him that he's open to using military force to take control of these assets?
Yes, look, I think that perhaps is the wild card and one of the most alarming aspects of this. This has not been suggested previously, and it needs to be observed that there are ways in which territory can be acquired through peaceful means. And in fact, the United States has got quite a history of acquiring territory through peaceful means, through treaty negotiations. And in fact, Alaska was acquired through a peaceful purchase from Russia back in the 19th century. But any suggestion that the United States might use military means, I think, will raise significant alarm bells, especially in Europe, because, of course, the United States is a party to the NATO treaty, and the NATO treaty places constraints and limitations on the use of force, and any attack on Greenland would be considered to be an attack on the territory of a NATO state, which could invoke Article 5 of the NATO treaty.
Some complicated times ahead potentially, but could you really imagine it getting to that point? That does seem like it would be quite an extreme outcome. Are these empty words?
Look, I don't necessarily think so, and I think that one of the reasons why the United States has begun to express more interest in Greenland is because China is becoming much more active in the Arctic. And I think there might be a concern in Washington that if Greenland does move towards becoming an independent state, that opens up the possibility for all sorts of other major actors to become quite significant players in an independent Greenland, because it is a very large island, as we've said. It's got some strategic resources. It's strategically and geopolitically important, but it's also very vast and has a very small population. And if Greenland was to become an independent state, the new Greenlandic government would certainly be interested in any forms of foreign investment. And so, to that end, some of these statements coming out of Washington and Florida at the moment from incoming President Trump might be really an indicator the United States is really seeking to ward off any potential Chinese interest in Greenland into the future.
So where does this go from here? The Prime Minister of Greenland says the island's not for sale. Local Indigenous people don't seem interested in joining the US at this point. Why hasn't that just ended the conversation?
I think because we're seeing these constant statements being made, not only about Greenland, of course, but also about Canada. And whether or not this suggests that the Trump administration is really seeking to assert a very broad and wide-ranging control across all of North America really remains to be seen. And so I think we really have to wait and see in terms of how US policy will develop over coming weeks and months. And in particular, we'll need to see what Marco Rubio, the incoming Secretary of State from the United States, will be having to say about these matters when he takes office.
You mentioned Canada, just as I was about to, Donald. Donald Trump says Canada should be absorbed into the US as a new state. Surely, even before he becomes president again, he's not making many friends on the international stage.
No, and having just been in Canada only a few weeks ago, I know that his comments about this and, of course, the potential tariff war between Canada and the United States are evoking great alarm in Canada. And as has rightly been reported, I think that this was one of the factors which led to the resignation of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So I think that in Canada, there's always been great alarm and great concern about some US aspirations in terms of its position with respect to Canada and uncertainty with respect to its position in Canada. And so, given the fact that we have a fair level of political turmoil at the moment in Ottawa, which will take some time to be resolved throughout 2025, we're certainly in for a period of political instability, I think, in terms of Canadian-American relations also.